Hi again, everyone. This video is sponsored by contribution from April, and here's her story. Hi, Ollie. You did a video earlier for me this week, filling the hole the narcissist dug. I was planning to wait until next month to send my story. However, Meetnormous has really motivated me with his latest bullshit to not wait and send more stories and more contributions to the channel now. I have a ton of questions. Please read the whole thing before you respond. This next story is about my narcissistic ex-husband. You've done 2 videos about him so far. Covert physical abuse by the narcissist and how the narcissist triangulated you into his mommy homemaker. For this next story, I need some help understanding why stuff happened the way it did. I realize you're not a therapist, but my therapist had no answers, and I believe you are uniquely qualified based on your experiences to provide an opinion and help me better understand what happened and why. We all know that abuse victims can either become abusers themselves or choose to heal from their abuse and not repeat the harmful and destructive behaviors they were taught by their abusers. My ex-husband, who was my abuser, was also a victim himself of childhood physical and sexual abuse. I did not know about that when I married him because he did not tell me until 5 years into the marriage. Looking back on the early days of our relationship and marriage, there were some tells that something really fucked up had happened to him early in life. However, I could not see these tells because I had no experience with the effects of sexual trauma. Therefore, I couldn't make a connection at the time. For example, I mentioned before in the covert physical abuse story, he definitely had a severe anger problem. Like the time he caught this shirt on a door handle and proceeded to rip the shirt to shreds, or the time he threw the coffee out the window because it was made wrong, or the time his car died and he took a baseball bat and beat the fuck out of that car before it was towed away. There were so many instances like this that happened, too many to name. But there were others as well. When we were dating, he had this severe anxiety, fear, and obsession with using public toilets and was terrified of having stomach problems when we went out. He was kept he kept rolls of toilet paper in his car, according to him, just in case he had to pull over and shit in the woods. It was to the point where he would spend an hour in the bathroom before we would leave, trying to force himself to shit so he could feel comfortable and that he wouldn't have to go at some point later when we were out. He would also take anti-diarrhea medication before we would leave just in case. It sounds like something definitely happened to him in regards to this, and I think I know what it is because I think something similar happened to me. And since you asked me to read, I'm going to read the whole thing before I comment. Unfortunately, this often left him constipated, which only made it worse. He went to his doctor repeatedly for his stomach problems, and repeatedly he was told there was no physical medical reason for it. I'm a little embarrassed to bring this next tell, but the truth is, there were some issues in our sex life. I'm not comfortable going into detail on that point, but let's just say there were issues and I was never comfortable talking to him about it. I was always fearing his reaction to everything, so I just left it alone and accepted the situation as it pertained to our sex life. About 5 years into the marriage, which was around 2008, I woke up in the middle of the night and my husband wasn't in bed. That wasn't unusual, actually. It was around this time that he was developing an anxiety and panic disorder that would make him wake up in the middle of the night. I know the attacks were real because I could feel and hear the symptoms. His heart rate would go way up. When that would happen, he would leave our bed, go downstairs, turn on the TV, and fall asleep on the sofa after the attack had passed. I'm a heavy sleeper and I don't typically wake up in the middle of the night, but that night I did, and for some strange reason I decided to go downstairs and check on my husband. It was strange because the TV wasn't on and he was sitting in the dark. I was sleepy and disoriented, but I asked him if he was okay at that moment. He blurted out he had been molested when he was a kid and it was one of his uncles that did it. I was stunned and didn't know what to say. I asked him if he had told anyone and if anyone else knew. He said no, and that I was the only one he told. We started to talk about it a little bit. He told me it happened mostly in the summers when his family would travel north to visit relatives and these camping trips. I didn't want to ask too many questions because I was afraid it would upset him. So I just let him talk for a few minutes. Didn't get too graphic, but I could tell what happened was pretty awful. Then he asked me if I thought he should tell his mother. His father had died years earlier, and I don't know if he ever knew or suspected anything. It was his brother that did it. I told my husband that I really wasn't qualified. I wasn't really qualified to come in or advise him. I recommended he see a therapist that specializes in helping abuse victims. At that point, he shut that idea down fast and started getting irritated with me, so I dropped it. The only thing I could think to say at the time was that I loved him and supported him and that I believed him. I also told him that as far as telling other people that that only he could decide, and that he had to be prepared for any reaction or outcome that would result from disclosing the abuse. But that no matter what happened, that I would be there to support him. I have no idea if that was good advice or bad advice on my part. I was just so blindsided and unprepared. He decided not to tell anyone, and I agreed to keep the information to myself, which I did. After that night, our marriage began a downward spiral. His violence got worse. His treatment of me got worse. The panic attacks got worse. When he would get them, instead of just going to the living room, he would actually wake me and make me stay up with him and talk to him until the panic attacks subsided. I didn't get a good night's sleep for years after that. I mentioned in the Mommy Homemaker story that his brother was living with us during this time up until 2011. He would wake me up, but not his brother. After his brother left and it was just the two of us, he would wake me up several times a week, so I rarely got a full night's sleep. It was around 2012 that I noticed I was getting sicker more often with respiratory infections and feeling run down most of the time. Then he started having these panic attacks during the daytime, and he would call me at work or when I was in the car or on the train, at company functions, or when I was with friends. It was constant. And if I didn't make myself available to him at those very moments, he would get super pissed at me and make me feel like shit for not being there for him. I would feel bad for him and try to help him through each panic attack. But over time, it started to wear on me. By 2013, I was noticing that I was beginning to have some anxiety and panic symptoms. Up to that point, I never experienced panic symptoms ever in my life. They were never as severe as his symptoms, but enough to be disruptive, and leave me not feeling well. It got so bad one time that I was having pain in my chest and neck, and I actually begged him for one of his Xanax so I could calm the fuck down and sleep. That only happened once. It was the best sleep of my life, but I don't like pills, so I never took another one after that. We had problems in our relationship and our marriage from the beginning to the end, but all couples have issues, so I didn't think much about that. I just figured this is the way it is, and marriage is supposed to be for better or for worse. But after 2008, when he told me about the abuse he suffered as a child, things just went from worse to major worse. It was incremental, and I was in denial over it. He started spending more and more time working on his hobbies and spending more time with his friends. He was less interested in spending time with me. He was more violent, more aggressive, more disagreeable in general. The more I tried to bring us closer, the more he pulled away. By 2012, that was the time when he pressured me into selling our house, a house he knew I loved, and guilted me into moving. Then, shut up, Axel! Then he hyper-proceeded to make me do all the work to make that happen, while he partied with friends and then moved that horse, Sarah, into our house for 2 months. By the way, she wasn't 400 pounds and toothless. She was 26 and thin, but not super hot. The only way I can think to describe her is that she looked like Betty Boop with a geek girl or nerd chick persona. That probably wasn't relevant to the story, but I wanted to clear that up since you questioned about how she looked from the Mommy Homemaker video. Anyway, by 2014, I was done with all this. I couldn't take his treatment of me anymore. So I had so much guilt about leaving him because I knew he had been severely abused as a child, and he was really fucked up from that. I really wanted to help, but he wouldn't help himself. I was sick all the time, packing on weight and feeling depressed enough that I was thinking about suicide. I didn't want to die, I just wanted the pain to stop. So I made the decision to let him go and to save myself. It's 2 years later and I don't regret my decision. I sleep through the night, I don't get sick as much. I'm starting to lose weight now and I have a better attitude and a better outlook on my life and future. So after all that, Ollie, here are my questions. I'm hoping you may have some insight or opinion to offer to help me unravel all of this and try to make some sense out of it. I know you can't possibly know what was in my husband's head. I know exactly what's in your husband's head, and I can't believe your therapist didn't figure this out. But can you think of any potential reasons why he chose not to tell me about the abuse he suffered before we were married? He was embarrassed by it. As a man, it's really hard to talk about, especially when another man does it to you. Why did he choose that particular moment in 2008 to tell me? Because it was all catching up to him. You said he is having legitimate panic attacks. You can hear. Eventually, that pain and that abuse is going to catch up to you. Look, it should have all made sense about the bathroom and when he said, if I ever have to take a shit in the woods. That's why he brings the toilet paper and the diarrhea and all that, right? Well, where did the abuse happen? By his uncle, camping in the woods. It's all related. Now, I don't know exactly what the connection is in his head, but that's the connection. And I'm sure what you were talking about in your own personal sex life, it's all related to this abuse. All of it. All of it. He's carrying around toilet paper in case he has to take a shit in the woods. Where did his sexual abuse happen? In the woods. Camping. He's made some kind of protective thing in his head that if he doesn't have to go to the bathroom, that's why he does it. See, like for me, I thought it was going to be something like he was, I had a coming back from the shore when I was a kid. I mean, I was a little kid too. But I remember it. I had to go to the bathroom, and my father wouldn't stop at public restrooms, and my mother made him stop at his parents' house because it was on the way, and it was this whole big friggin' thing. And then when we ended up getting to my grandparents' house, I didn't have to go to the bathroom anymore. It just... So I thought that. So I would never, ever. So I, to this day, have a thing about stopping. But with him, he brings toilet paper in case he has to take a shit in the woods. He has this whole protective thing about the bathroom and taking a shit. And he says he carries the toilet paper just in case. Where did the abuse happen? In the woods. Eventually, all that's going to catch up to you in life. You're not going to be able to suppress it, and that's where the panic attacks. And that's why I guess he figured he had to say something at that point. Or he also saw it, hey, maybe this is a way, all right, I never wanted to talk about this abuse before, but hey, at this point, I could use this to my advantage as a guilt, as a pity, to get what I want out of April. I believe I responded to his disclosure in a loving and understanding way. Do you agree or disagree? No, you did everything right. So why was he so resistant to seeking counseling? Was it because he really is a narcissist and afraid to let go of the mask? No, because it was about you. He didn't want to tell a therapist all this. He just wanted to tell you all this so you would then give him his pity supply. Do you understand? Even though it happened, he'll still use it to his advantage. Is it possible that he told me in 2008 because he was intending to discard me at that point and needed a way to do it that wouldn't make him look bad to his friends and family? I was well liked by his friends and his family as far as I knew. So was he possibly concerned about what they would think of him if he left me? No, because if you leave him because he told them, you understand, he was molested, he still didn't want his family to know about it. And you ended up leaving him. He didn't leave you. In general, he was very concerned about what other people thought of him. Image was very important. That's what every narcissist, isn't it? Did he just foil his plan by staying in the marriage and not being angry with him for not telling him sooner? For not telling me sooner? Is it possible that he was hoping I would be angry and disgusted and just abandon him so he could get out of the marriage with his image intact and then get all the sympathy from his friends and family? Possibly. It's possible. When I failed to get angry and chose to stay in the marriage in 2008, did he then have to escalate? Did he then have to escalate his poor treatment of me for the next 6 years in order to get me to leave him and keep his image intact? Well, a 6-year plan to get you to leave him? I don't think so. I think this guy is just, his past caught up to him and he was spiraling out of control. You already said he had violent outbursts. He took a bat to a car because it broke down. It's not a far leap to think that this is going to escalate as he gets older and as you find out more information. I think it's the natural progression. I did become a pariah when I left him, including getting angry phone call from his mother telling me that I didn't have to leave him and that I was being ridiculous leaving him the way I did. I didn't tell him I was leaving. I moved out during the day on one day while he was at work. That may seem extreme, but I really was afraid of him and I just needed to protect myself. All his friends walked away from me and I lost one of my own friends who decided to move to his camp. A few months after I moved out, I found evidence that my husband was having an affair with another woman. It wasn't the Betty Boop chick, it was another 20-something girl. One of his friends actually admitted to me that they knew he was seeing her and that they thought she was a really nice kid. Well, I guess that told me what they really thought of me, doesn't it? Obviously, I'm no contact with a whole lot of them, no regrets on that decision. It was very dark and depressing time for me, but it needed to be done. So tell me, Ollie, what is your take on this? Am I just trying to fabricate an elaborate plot by him to get rid of me? Or do you think I'm crazy for even thinking that? It took me 8 years to come up with that theory, as it's not natural for me to think like this. He did not tell me about the abuse before we were married because he really wanted a mommy homemaker. Oh wait, did he not tell me about the abuse before we were married because he really wanted a mommy homemaker and couldn't risk that I might have chosen to back out of the marriage? Did he tell me about the abuse 5 years into the marriage in order to begin the discard process? Why did he tell me at all? That's the biggest unanswered question that I've had on my mind for the past 8 years. I know I'll never know for sure what he was thinking or what his motivations were to tell me or not to tell me, and his choice of timing. But I sure would be interested in your opinion based on your in-depth experience dealing with narcissistic sociopaths and their twisted little minds. By the way, best of luck to you and Charlene and sticking it to Meat Enormous and Drunky the Fuck Clown. Those two fuckers deserve whatever happens to them. Also, best of luck continuing to grow the channel. You can count on my continued support. Sincerely, April. Look, sexual abuse is hard to talk about for guys. That's a hard thing to put your finger on why he didn't tell you. Why he told you when he did, it could only be one or two things. It's either he couldn't handle it anymore and it caught up to him, or he did it as a way to manipulate and control. Either way, you're out of the marriage and away from him, and you found out who your real friends are. That's the important thing. I think this all caught up to him based on his prior behavior to him telling you about, the bathroom thing, and then finding out where the abuse occurred. Think about it. Carrying that toilet paper thing is so telling. It tells you everything you need to know. I would lean towards he was spiraling, okay, and that's what the other women are probably about as well. He was spiraling. His past was catching up to him, and it went out of control. And he just couldn't handle it. He just couldn't handle it. And a lot of them try to relive their youth when it tries to come out, when it comes out. And I think that's really more of what you're dealing with. Now, when he decided to tell you, did he try to use that to his advantage? Absolutely. Absolutely. In that moment when he broke and told you, did he have that in his mind? Probably not. Probably was a legitimate panic attack. And then what narcissists do when something bad happens is, all right, this came out. How do I turn and use this to a positive? And that's what I really think happened with your ex-husband. So thank you so much for your contribution, your continued support, April. I really appreciate it. And thank you for your story. Thank you to everybody watching. Please leave any opinions or advice in the comment section below. And again, if you want your story read on the channel, you have a topic you'd like me to cover, or a narcissist you'd like to expose, you know what to do with the PayPal and my email links in the description box. I'll have the video right back to you. This is Ollie Matthews. Thanks for watching. See you all again soon.